He said earlier this morning that he would filibuster any choice that President Obama made. Are you taking the same position?
Yeah, but he won't have to, because Mitch McConnell's already made it very clear that we're not going to move forward until there's an election. And I think that's the right decision. The court can function with 8 justices. In the last year, within the last few months of the president's term, we should not be appointing Supreme Court justices. Now, the president can go ahead and nominate whoever he wants. The Senate shouldn't move forward on it until after the election. We're going to have an election in November. One of the key...
So if you're elected president, will you promise not to make an appointment in your final year?
Yeah, well, I'm not saying the president can't make an appointment. I'm saying we're not going to move forward on it in the Senate. And that has been the practice now for over 80 years. Well, he shouldn't. He has the legal right to do it. But, and as president, I would recognize that precedent. And the precedent that's been set over the last 80 years has been that in the last year of a president's term, and in his second term especially, there should not be Supreme Court nominees put into lifetime positions for a president that you're not going to be able to hold accountable at the ballot box. There's going to be an election in November. This is going to be an issue in the election. The voters are going to choose a new president, and that new president, who I believe will be me, should then fill that vacancy for a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court.
Started with Senator Rubio asking him whether the Senate has an obligation to give the president's Supreme Court nominee an up or down vote.
We have an obligation to do it, but not now. The term of the Supreme Court is already, or they just started it, but it's not all year long. The court can function with 8 justices. It does it all the time, especially when justices have to recuse themselves. For example, Kagan had to recuse herself early in her term because she just left the administration. We're going to have an election in November where this vacancy is going to be an item of debate, and voters are going to get to weigh in. So I just don't think it's wise, and there's precedent for this, for a president nearing the last few months of his administration to put someone on the court that may be there for 30 years.
So you don't think that... I understand that. And I understand the decision that you may not support, that the Republican majority doesn't want this. But aren't they obligated to at least go through the motions here? I mean, you're saying don't even go through the motions. Why?
Correct. Well, we will go through the motions, but not while Barack Obama's in the White House.
Well, why? I mean, do presidential terms end after 3 years? I mean, that's what I don't understand is why not go through the advice and consent? You don't have to approve it. You can reject it. That's what happened in '68. But why not go through this process?
Because it's not just for the Supreme Court, even for appellate courts. It's been both parties have followed this precedent. There comes a point in the last year of the president, especially in their second term, where you stop nominating or you stop the advice and consent process. You basically say at this point, with a few months left in your term, no accountability from the ballot box on the appointment you're going to make on a lifetime appointment.
11 months.
That's the important thing here. These are not laws that can be...
I understand that, but
but these are not laws that can be reversed. In essence, this is a lifetime appointment to the highest court in the country at a time when the balance of the Constitution and the court's interpretation of it is at stake. We're not moving forward on it. Mitch McConnell's already made that very clear. I support it 100%. Here's the bottom line. I don't trust Barack Obama on the appointment of Supreme Court justices. We cannot afford to have Scalia replaced by someone like the nominees he's put there in the past. We're going to have an election. There's going to be a new president. I believe it's going to be me. And we're going to look for someone that most resembles Scalia to replace him.
Now, Senator, when you say lame duck, President Obama's basically been a lame duck since he was reelected in 2012. Are you saying that no president can appoint someone to the Supreme Court in their second term?
Well, I'm not saying it's illegal. He most certainly has the power to nominate someone. The Senate's already said it. Mitch McConnell last night was very clear. We are not moving forward on a Supreme Court nominee until after this election. And one of the reasons why is this president is no longer, he's now at the end. If this was early in his second term, that's one thing. But he now has less than a year left in office. The Supreme Court can function with 8 justices. They're not in year round, so they can get through this term of the Supreme Court with all of its decisions. They've done this before. And then there'll be an election in November, and we're going to have a debate about what kind of justice should replace Scalia, and the voters are going to get to vote for a new president. And I think this will be part of their calculus. So I think we should wait till after November before we move forward on confirming any justice to the Supreme Court. The president can nominate whoever he wants, but the Senate's not going to act, and that's pretty clear. So we can be debating it, but we're not moving forward on it, period.
But Ronald Reagan named Anthony Kennedy to the Supreme Court in November of his 7th year. And Kennedy was actually confirmed in Reagan's 8th year. So are you saying somehow that November is okay, but 3 months later is over the line?
Yeah, again, I mean, I don't. It doesn't really matter what they've done. Reagan did back in '87. It was in '87 when he nominated him, and so obviously it was still earlier in the year. This was November, October, or September of last year, where the president had more than a year left in office. Then perhaps this would be a different discussion. But he now has basically about 11 months, 10 and a half months left in office. We have an election coming up. There'll be a debate over what the Supreme Court justices should be like. And voters are going to weigh in November, and they're going to elect a new president. So I think the president should allow the next president to appoint the justice to the Supreme Court. And if it's me, and I anticipate that it will be, I'm going to look for someone in the mold of Justice Scalia, who, while irreplaceable, I think is a model jurist and one of the great jurists in American history.